Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the match reaction, the instant match reaction, whatever you want to call it, to Tottenham Hotspur to Everton 0 last night at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Apologies that this video is of course the morning after the night before. Maybe for the away days I should start calling the match reactions the morning after the night before, because listen, by the time I get home from these games, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, there was absolutely no chance I was sitting down and having any sort of thought or feeling other than I'm really hungry and I want to go to sleep. So apologies about the lateness of this video, but it is the instant match reaction. Another defeat for Everton, another defeat for Frank Lampard's Everton, of course, second on the bounce now after last week's defeat to Manchester United. And again, another loss to a good side, a side that will undoubtedly be challenging for the Champions League this season, or for Champions League football this season. May even give, the title challenges in Manchester City and Arsenal a run for their money in terms of the league title. But again, that might be a little bit of a stretch. And another disappointing night at the office for Everton. Another disappointing result. Another disappointing performance, really. But again, small margins. I think, it was very easy last night to, have all of the emotion of being angry and being upset and being, fuming and furious and disappointed at the fact that we'd gone away from home again and we'd lost, or we'd gone all the way down there and we'd lost. But the reality of the situation is, when you actually analyse the game and when you take a step back and you look at it with, not an Everton head on and not the emotion of, how bad we hate losing, you look at another game of football in which ultimately Everton have lost due to a penalty, which is still never a penalty for me. I've seen all of the angles. I've seen the angle in which, Jordan Pickford makes a slight bit of contact with Harry Kane's shorts. In fact, Jordan Pickford's hair gel merely damages Harry Kane's shorts, and Harry Kane throws himself on the floor with his arm in the air. Again, I really don't care about that. The fact that there was a slight bit of contact, there's nowhere near enough contact for the 6'3" fella who probably weighs about 14, 15 stone. Probably not that, 12, 13 stone, whatever it is, to throw himself on the floor. However, he's England's captain, he's the national treasure, he's everybody's sweetheart, so he was always going to get that decision. And a deflected goal which was scored in the final 5 minutes of the game when Everton were pushing to try and get an equaliser. Ultimately, it is small margins, and look, for as much as the penalty I don't think is a penalty, and I think it's extremely lucky, and I will go out and say, and listen, if this was Frank Lampard saying this, he'd get fined, but the FA can't fine me, so I'll say what I want. If it was at the other end of the pitch, it wouldn't have been given, and it's as simple as that, and that is an absolute fact, and that fact was proven by the fact that last season at Goodison Park, when Spurs come to Goodison, Richarlison, who was an Everton player at the time, took the ball around Hugo Lloris, was whipped up with Hugo Lloris's hands, and the penalty wasn't given because it was judged that there was not enough contact. And it was the exact same situation with Harry Kane. There was nowhere near enough contact, but it was always going to get given. The reality is, it was a mistake by Jordan Pickford. He shouldn't have allowed the ball to spill in the first place and give England's biggest diver and national sweetheart the opportunity to throw himself on the floor to win a penalty. But he did. It happened, and from that point on, ultimately, it was always going to be, a losing battle, really. We were very, very poor going forward for the entirety of the game. And I've seen a lot of people criticising Frank Lampard after yesterday's results and yesterday's performance. And I've seen a lot of people bringing out some stats that maybe suggest that Frank Lampard isn't doing as good of a job as certain people seem to think he is, or whatever that is. I had no issue with the way Everton set up yesterday. Listen, we are going to have games this season where we are a little bit boring to watch, where we are, difficult to sit there and watch, where we are defensive, where we haven't got a lot of the ball, where we are going to sit back and, ultimately invite pressure onto us, because the reality of the situation is we haven't got the quality that a team like Tottenham Hotspur have got. We haven't got the likes of Harry Kane, Heung-min Son, Richarlison up front. We haven't got, those players that when given an opportunity, will make teams pay within an instant. Okay, you could say, well, we've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but he's nowhere near fit enough to be starting games of football consistently at the moment. He's not even near fit enough to be starting a game of football at all. So we're going to have games, especially away from home, against these teams that are comfortably within the top 4 teams in the country. And, as I said, playing in Champions League, in the Champions League, we're going to have performances where we do sit back, and the game plan is to sit back, to defend really, really well, and to hit them on the counter-attack. And I think that was the right way to settle for Frank Lampard yesterday. For all as we want to see Everton have a go, and for all as we want to see Everton get at teams, and for all as we want to see Everton, have a go and run at them. Listen, maybe, again, in hindsight, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, maybe Everton, may have set up yesterday with a little bit more urgency, with a bit more intensity, with a bit more effort. Not effort, because I think there was effort there, but maybe Everton would have set up yesterday, had a go at them, got at them, put them under a bit of pressure, and maybe this Spurs team would have completely flapped themselves, made mistakes, crumbled under pressure, and maybe would have gone on and won that game. However, maybe Everton would have, set up yesterday to try and get at Spurs, to try and play football against them, to try and match them, to try and battle with them, and maybe Spurs would have been 3-0 up in 15 minutes like they were last season when Everton went down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and tried to play football. And that was one of the biggest mistakes and biggest lessons of Frank Lampard's Everton career so far, was going there last season and trying to outplay them, because they were 2-0 up in 15 minutes and we ended up losing the game 5-0. And we were much worse then, okay, I understand that, but they were also worse than what they are now. They're a much better team than what they were then. And the reality is, if the tactic yesterday from Frank Lampard, and we don't know this because ultimately, I've not spoken to Frank Lampard, and if I'm being honest, I didn't really listen to the post-match interviews either. But if the game plan yesterday was to defend, hit them on the counter-attack, and take your chances on the counter-attack, then Everton should have been 2-0 up within the first 45 minutes. Demarai Gray and Amadou Onana miss chances that you simply cannot afford to miss. And that is where the problem lies a little bit at Everton at the moment. I still don't think there's need for any real sort of meltdown or need for any real sort of collapse, because at the end of the day, we've lost 2 games to Manchester United and Tottenham. The Tottenham game being away from home. This Tottenham team are top of the league, by the way, now. Okay, that might change today at some point, depending on results, but this Tottenham team are top of the league. This Tottenham team, as I said, will comfortably finish in the top 4 this season. This Tottenham team are a very good side. Very, very good side. So just because we've lost to them away from home, and we lost to Manchester United last week, doesn't mean we should be sitting here screaming and shouting about how woeful things are at the moment. However, as I said, the problem lies when we try and play that counter-attacking style, and we've got the defence sorted out, because I thought James Tarkowski and Connor Cody were absolutely phenomenal yesterday. I thought that both of them were brilliant, especially James Tarkowski. I thought he was very, very good. The problem lies when you then hit teams on the counter-attack and you have the opportunities and you can't hit the target. Now, listen, we were obviously sat at the other end of the stadium when both of those chances were missed. I felt there was a little bit of pressure on Demarai Gray. Maybe had he have gone down, it would have given the referee a decision to make, certainly given that he was very quick to give Harry Kane a penalty for very little contact in the second half. But the reality is, for both Gray and Onana, you have to hit the target there. You do. I like both players, and I think both players have had a decent start to the season. And look, Onana's new into the league, new into the country, maybe was under a little bit of pressure, maybe crumbled under the pressure a little bit, felt a little bit, lost his composure a little bit and lashed at it. And he did. That's exactly what he did. But the reality is, you are Premier League footballers. If you hit the target and Hugo Lloris makes a decent save, or makes a great save, or tips it over, or it's not quite, a good enough shot to cause any problem to a World Cup winning goalkeeper, then fine, that's fine. You've hit the target, you've done your job, it was unlucky, you move on. But to not hit the target with both of those chances from where they were, it's really, really poor. It's really, really, really poor. And we can sit here and we can talk about Frank Lampard and tactics and have a go and, why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do that? The reality is, if Frank Lampard sets up for us to defend, completely nullified their front line, which we did in the first half, and then hit them on the counter-attack to get our opportunities, that is what we did. And when we hit them on the counter-attack, the two clear chances, which were the best two chances of the game, and they scored twice, we ballooned over the bar without causing any issue whatsoever. And look, in hindsight, you could say if it was Mopey, if it was Calvert-Lewin, if it was Iwobi, it'd have been a different question. But the reality is, every one of those players on that pitch should be able to hit the target from 50 and 20 yards out. If I was playing this morning, if I played Sunday League and I was playing at the moment and I had a one-on-one from either of those positions that Onana and Gray had, and I ballooned it over the bar, I'd get screamed at. And I'm just a Sunday League footballer. Never mind a Premier League footballer on hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. I get that Onana's a midfielder and that's not necessarily his job, but everyone in that team, including the centre-halves, including the goalkeeper, including the backup centre-halves like Michael Keane, Mason Holgate, etc., should be able to hit the target from those areas, and we didn't. And when you don't hit the target with those chances, and you were sitting there at half time thinking, we've done well here, but we should be 2-0 up, then, it's always the case of ruining those opportunities, and that's typically what happens. Spurs come out in the second half, and they were a lot more vicious. They were on the front foot a lot more. Everton was sort of defending for our lives at that point. We had absolutely nothing going forward at this point. We weren't even hitting them on the counter-attack. McNeil, I thought, in the second half was a complete absence. May as well have sat next to me. Mopey, I thought, in the second half was completely absent. Damari Gray was completely absent, trying to do the difficult things. There were 2 or 3 occasions when both McNeil and Damari Gray would take a player on, get beyond the player, and then, do the hard bit. And then the easy bit, whether it be a pass or whether it be a simple run down the line or whether it be a cut inside, they'd get it wrong. They'd do the difficult bit and they'd get the easy bit wrong. And, ultimately, as I said, Spurs stepped on the gas a little bit. They had a captain who gets whatever he wants, whenever he wants, because he's the nation's captain. Or a player, sorry. And, threw himself on the floor, won a penalty. And when it went 1-0, that was always going to be the difficulty then, because when it went 1-0, Everton were forced to come out. Everton were forced to push. Everton were forced to try and get an equaliser. And that's when Spurs themselves started to hit us, had a couple of other opportunities, and then ultimately hit us on the counter-attack at the end of the game to score the second, which again was unfortunate. We conceded a penalty, which should never have been a penalty, was a mistake by Jordan Pickford, and Jordan was inches away from saving it, and we conceded a deflected goal against the team that are top of the league. So whilst it wasn't good enough, and whilst I'm not sitting here saying that's acceptable, and whilst I'm not sitting here saying I'm happy with that, I'm not happy with that. I travelled all the way down to London yesterday. Didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning to watch Everton lose again. I'm not happy with that whatsoever. But it's not like we've been ripped to bits 5-0. And do you know what? Even if we were ripped to bits 5-0, this is a team that currently sit top of the league table, a team that finished in the top 4 last season, playing a team that merely survived relegation. Things are not going to get better overnight. I said this when we done the live stream about being patient on Thursday. We are not going to turn up at teams like Tottenham and wipe the floor with them. We're not going to turn up to teams like Tottenham and be able to go toe-to-toe with them, outplay them and beat them 2 or 3-0. Arsenal beat them a couple of weeks ago by 1 goal. Arsenal are one of the best teams in the league at the moment, and every season have been improving season in, season out. We are nowhere near that level. For us to get anything out of that game yesterday, it was always going to be a defensive tactic and to try and hit them on the counter-attack. And when we did that, we missed the chances that we had on the counter-attack, and you simply cannot miss those chances. You just can't. It's not ultimately, it's not good enough, and we did. I thought the forward line were absolutely absent yesterday. Absolutely absent, as I said. McNeil worked hard in the first half. Pulled himself about, battled, but the reality of the situation was he was completely absent in the second half. Damari Gray, as I said, should do much better with his opportunity, but other than that, wasn't involved whatsoever. Ballooning crosses over the bar, and ballooning crosses, too much power on them over everybody's head, trying to beat people 2 or 3 times, and he's already beaten them. Mopey was as involved as me in terms of the impact on the actual game of football. look, I like Neil Maupay, and I don't think it was necessarily Neil Maupay's fault that he wasn't massively involved, but the reality is he wasn't massively involved, and it has to be said. The midfield, I thought, were unusually absent. I thought Iwobi was unusually absent yesterday. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think he done anything particularly wrong, and I don't think he was particularly bad, especially when he had the ball at his feet. But he wasn't involved anywhere near as much as what he was, what he has been in weeks prior. Onana, again, when he had the ball, wasn't particularly bad. When he was throwing the slide tackles in, wasn't particularly bad. But in the grand scheme of things, on the balance of the play, he didn't control that midfield at all, which is ultimately what he was there to do. That was his job, and he didn't do that. Again, Garner in the first half was very good, breaking the play up, moving the ball along, winning the ball back, cutting in, making challenges, taking the ball off their players in key areas. As I said, all of the stuff that he's great at doing. But in the second half, was completely absent, and in fact, until he was brought off, I forgot he was on the pitch. Defensively, I thought we were good. That is one positive I'd say. I thought Tarkowski and Connor Cody were very, very good. Especially Tarkowski, who from the first 30 seconds of the game was making, game-winning challenges and ultimately keeping the game at 0-0. And he continued that throughout the entirety of the game. Cody, again, similarly, I thought the fullbacks were okay. Mikalenko, I thought, was much better than Seamus Coleman, who is evidently nowhere near good enough to be starting for Everton. Listen, I love Seamus. He's a legend. He's brilliant. But, one thing I'll say is the moment we have Nathan Patterson back fit and ready to play, we will improve, because he's much better than Seamus Coleman is. And yeah, as I said, I will call it an individual mistake by Jordan Pickford, because it is, because he should have done better. He shouldn't have spilt the first shot, and he should have known that if he was going to jump in, even if there was no contact, Harry Kane was going to dive, because that's what Harry Kane does. He dives, he throws himself on the floor. So it's a mistake by Jordan, and it's a deflected goal, which, with a difference between us getting something out of that game and not getting something out of that game. Reality is, Everton could have and should have been 2-0 up at half time, certainly 1-0 up. If you were to say, well, a lot of averages, you scored at least one of those chances. We're 1-0 up, and all of a sudden, the game changes, because all of a sudden, they don't get their second goal. The first goal, okay, maybe they get the penalty. The second goal come completely from the counter-attack, because we were pushing to try and get a goal back. Never happens. Never happens if the game's 1-1 or we're 1-0 up. Never happens. So, look, it was disappointing. It was frustrating. It was, annoying. It was all of the above. And I get that. And I get that, we can sit here and we can say it's 2 defeats on the bounce. It's this, that, and the other. Reality of the situation is, I don't think we necessarily deserved anything out of the game. And I think it would, maybe be a little bit sort of harsh to say we did. However, it was small margins again, when we should have ultimately at least been a goal up at half time. And if we are, then it's a different game. It's a different outfit. I don't particularly blame Frank Lampard for yesterday. Substitutions wise, I'd have brought Decore on instead of James Garner. I think there's a bit of a thing at the moment of having to get James Garner on the pitch because he's new, because we haven't really seen him, because the fans want to see him. I'm not saying I wouldn't have brought James Garner on, but I'd rather have James Garner come on for, an Iwobi or even a McNeil or Gray on the wing, not play James Garner on the wing, but change the formation about and take one of them off, because he's more of an attacking player. If you were bringing Garner off, I'd have put Decore on in there, just to shore that midfield up. James Garner isn't going to do the defensive work that Idrissa Gana Gueye does. I don't blame him for that, because he's not that type of player. But look, it is what it is. We've lost to a very good team away from home. As I said, it is small margins. Whether we want to admit it or not, it's small margins, and we've now got to go and pick ourselves up and play a good Newcastle team that are good at home, that are solid, that have got a lot of positivity at the moment, but are very, very beatable, and a team that haven't got as much quality as Tottenham have, and a team that won't cause as much trouble as Tottenham will. But it is really disappointing yesterday when you look at the way in which the game went. It's disappointing, but we move on, we pick ourselves up, and we go again, because that's ultimately all we can do. Carter says, morning Cam, hope you enjoyed the away day other than the results, of course. Yeah, it was great. The atmosphere in the concourse before the game was the best I've ever witnessed. The best I've ever witnessed, without a doubt. C-Play says, see as Everton fans, we need to admit we are crap. Hate that sitting back Burnley football, and a keeper is remembered for making mistakes than the saves. Also, Kane is a diving, but of course it comes from a big mistake. Listen, the reality is, I'll put it out there now. There's 30 odd people watching live. There'll be people watching as a YouTube video. If you are watching, by the way, please hit that like button. It only takes a second. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. Would you have rather have Everton have gone toe-to-toe with Tottenham yesterday and lost 4-5-0? Or play the way we did, had opportunities to win the game, still lost the game ultimately? And some people say, well, I'd rather just go toe-to-toe and have a go and lose 5-0 and 2-1. But the reality is, had we have gone toe-to-toe with Tottenham, we were never, ever, ever getting anything other than a complete and utter battering out of that game. Had we have performed the way we did on another day, with players with a little bit more composure and quality, we get something out of that game. So, look, it is what it is. Cal says, how was the rosé, Cam? It went down a seat until our bag got lost on the coach coming home, and the bottle that I had in there was gone. So, this is part of a rebuild. Got to keep faith in the manager, says Lee. Spot on. Let's have it right. If we score one of them 2 chances, we probably go on and win, says Andy. I agree. I think we'll recover before it gets worrying. Yeah, I'm absolutely not worried at all. I'm not worried at all. Cal says Jordan's worst game of the season. Even when he made some decent saves, his distribution was a little off. Yeah, Harry Kane goes to ground convincingly, and he's the best taker of a pen in the Premier League. Yeah, I agree. Anyway, look, we are going to finish it there. If you have enjoyed this one, please do leave a like. We will be back for the player ratings in about 5 minutes, so don't forget to look out for that one. Massive thanks to everybody in the live comments. I really appreciate it. If you want a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below, and we'll get involved with as many of them as we can. But big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed. It's another defeat, but we put it to one side, we move on, and we go again on Wednesday night. Big thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.